All right. Well, good evening from Iraq. Welcome and thank you for joining this webinar today. I'm Angel George, a researcher from Sbey Research NGO and an honors graduate from the American University of Iraq here in Sulaymaniyah. It's an honor to co-host this important international webinar with Dr. Kardo, one of our distinguished speakers. Before we begin, allow me to briefly introduce Sbey Research. We are a nonprofit organization based in Sulaymaniyah and established in December of 2022. This research organization collects localized data from the Kurdistan region of Iraq on pressing regional issues ranging from politics to economy, sociological topics, and many more relevant developments. It's directed by Dr. Robert Talat. Now, this webinar is part of our ongoing series within the Turkish Studies unit, which aims to deepen international understanding of a complicated region like ours. And we turn our attention today to a very significant topic, that is the future of the Kurdish question in Turkey following PKK's decision to disband. Our discussion will explore both the historical context and then the future outlook of this pressing question, of course, guided by the insights of our speakers. Namely, and to provide some short introductions, we have with us Professor Mesut Yeğen, leading Turkish sociologist known for his in-depth work on nationalism, citizenship, and the Kurdish issue in Turkey. He's currently teaching at Istanbul Şehir University and served as an editor of the Kurdish History Journal. His most influential publications include The Kurdish Question and State Discourse, From Future Turk to So-Called Citizen. Then a more recent collaborative work is What Do the Kurds Want? Exploring how ethnicity, religion, class, and politics intersect in Kurdish society today. Our second key speaker is Binar FK. Binar is a fellow at the Kroc Institute for International Peace Studies and a graduate student in global affairs at the University of Notre Dame. His background is in journalism, where he spent over a decade reporting from Iraqi Kurdistan on war, extremism, and regional politics. His investigative reporting has informed the works of global institutions like the Human Rights Watch, the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS, and the EU. He's based now in Washington, D.C., where he focuses on the political and security dynamics of the Middle East. Last but not least, our third keynote speaker was supposed to be Dr. Seda Altu. Seda is an assistant professor at Boğaziçi Universities at the Turkish Institute for Modern Turkish History, specializing in the late Ottoman Empire and the modern Middle East. Unfortunately, she was not able to make it due to some urgent issue, and she did send us her apologies. Now, the conversation will be moderated by Dr. Kardo, an associate professor at the University of Human Development here in Sulaymaniyah and the head of our Turkish Studies unit at Sbey Research. His work focuses on Middle Eastern politics and then non-state actors with publications on the Iraq post-ISIS conflict, armed groups, and regional security. Before I hand this to Dr. Kardo, just a quick note. As previously communicated to you, this webinar is being recorded and will be published across all Sbey Research platforms. So let's be careful about what we say. Now, I would turn to the discussion to Dr. Kardo, and thank you again for joining.
Thank you very much, Angel, for your kind presentation. And again, welcome to our guests and our speakers. As you told that we have two guests today. The first one, Professor Mesut Yeğen from Turkey, and we will start with him regarding the process of peace agreement between the PKK and the Turkish government. As we have seen, the process has started now, and the Kurdish guerrilla, they started to deliver their weapons and small steps started. And We want to know what could the consequences, what could be the requirements from the Turkish side will be now. What should take the Turkish state like steps in order to get that process to succeed? That's one of the most important peace process in the Middle East, parallelly like Palestinian and Israel process. So could you please tell us what could be the next step in that direction from the Turkish side that could get the process to succeed? Please, Professor, you have 20 minutes for your clarification, for explanation regarding that topic. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Let me begin with a few corrections. I don't know if you are using the term Turkish to refer my citizenship. If it is so, then it's okay. But I'm Kurdish, actually. The second thing, the Shared University that I used to work is closed down. It was closed down in 2020 by a presidential decree. And since then, I'm out of academia, basically. I'm out of university. So these are just two quick notes for clarification. And Kardo, if you allow me, I would like to begin with the reasons for the fact that we have this process, okay? This peace process.
Yes, please.
Because I think it's important to understand why this process suddenly started. I say suddenly because if we say that it started on the 1st of October, when the leader of this nationalist party in Turkey, Devlet Bahçeli, shook the hands of the leader of the pro-Kurdish Dem Party, Tuncer Bakırhan, if we say that the process started, okay, on the 1st of October with this small gesture, we need to keep in our minds that just 2 or 3 days before, or even the day before the 1st of October, okay, no one would say that a peace process was on the way. In fact, the picture was quite the other way around, okay, simply because the Turkish state was quite confident that it had solved the Kurdish question. It was quite confident that it did quite well in Syria, in Rojava, okay? And again, it did it was confident that it did quite well in the sense that it sort of lessened the impact of the pro-Kurdish Dem Party on Turkish politics, this and that. That's to say, if we look at from the Turkish state perspective, okay, on the, let's say, 3rd of September, okay, in 2024 at the issue, you can say that, okay, there was no need, okay, for the Turkish state to sort of carry out such a process. And in fact, as I said, Erdogan himself declared many times that they had solved the Kurdish question. So there was something kind of bizarre, or at least unexpected. Okay, the fact that the process started was something unexpected. So we need to understand why. Okay, and I have a kind of explanation as to why the process started suddenly. And to my knowledge, the main reason, and I would say the only reason maybe, is that the whole sort of regional theater, okay, in and around Turkey changed after the Hamas attack on Israel on the 7th of October in 2023, okay? As the regional theater surrounding the Kurdish question changed dramatically, Turkish state felt that it was kind of necessary, okay, to sort of initiate a new peace process with the Kurds, with the PKK, okay? Now I need to explain why this was so, and why the Turkish state felt that it was kind of necessary, okay, to carry out or initiate a new process. But in order to be able to explain why the Turkish state felt so, I have to say a couple of words as to how the Turkish state sort of coped with the Kurdish question before, okay, that time, okay, before the Hamas attack. I think let's say 100 years, okay, before Hamas attack, let's say, from 1918 up to 2023, the way the Turkish state coped with the Kurdish question, I think, can be examined in terms of two main periods, okay? One from, let's say, 1918 up to 1991, the Gulf War, and the second from Gulf War to Hamas attack, okay? Now, in the first period, things were quite easy for the Turkish state, simply because each of these four states hosting Kurds, okay, were sort of allowed by those who sort of became victorious in the First World War, okay, they were allowed to tackle with their Kurdish question as they sort of pleased, okay? And what they did was quite simple. They basically tried to dilute or assimilate their own Kurds, each of these four states, okay, Iran, Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. And besides, they sort of, while they were assimilating their own Kurds, or while they were trying to assimilate their own Kurds, they sort of monitored, okay, the Kurds in other three countries, okay, that they were sort of awake, okay, they were sort of careful about what was going on in other parts of the Kurdistan, basically, okay. So this is how they coped, and I would say that there was no major problem, okay, in these 70 or 80 years, except the fact that Kurds in Iraq enjoyed a kind of short period of autonomy between 70 and 74, okay? Which means when we came to 1991, okay, the situation or the picture was like that, okay? Okay, Kurds sort of resisted to what they were offered by their hosting states, but their sort of resistance was in vain. In the end, they didn't get anything, okay? They didn't have basic cultural rights. They didn't have any administrative, political rights, this and that, okay? This is how we came up to, let's say, 1991, okay? And then the second period started between 1991 up until, let's say, Hamas. And there, two things changed, basically. In Iraq, Kurds gained a kind of legal autonomy, de jure autonomy, and in Syria, they gained a kind of de facto autonomy, thanks to the collapse of Baas in Iraq, and thanks to the collapse of Baas in Syria. Okay, so that means something dramatically changed. Okay, in the regional theater, but on the other hand, even things changed dramatically, Turkey still achieved to cope with sort of what it's encountered, okay? Or let me put it this way, even the Kurds in Iraq and Syria, okay, became sort of autonomous. The result was kind of still digestible for both Iran and Turkey, okay, in the sense that they achieved, okay, to prevent the Kurds to gain more than what they had actually achieved, okay? For instance, and in fact, to arrive at this result, okay, Iran and Turkey, although they were sort of they were rival powers, they cooperated in many instances. You know that in one of these instances, for instance, their cooperation resulted with the fact that 2017 referendum became sort of inconsequential, and besides, the Kurds had to abandon the so-called disputed regions. And again, Iran and Turkey cooperation resulted with the fact that Hevler and Soleimani distinction became sort of consolidated, okay? And the same applies to Syria. There again, although Syrian Kurds gained the de facto autonomy, Turkey achieved to prevent the so-called Kurdish belt on the north of Syria, okay? And besides, Turkey seized the control of Afrin, this and that. So what I'm trying to say is this. In the second period, okay, things changed, but on the other hand, things were still digestible for Turkey and Iran, okay? But starting with Hamas, starting with the collapse of the resistance axis, then things started to become potentially indigestible for Turkey, okay? When the resistance axis collapsed, Turkey realized the fact that, okay, Iran was no more there, so it had basically two choices. either it had to try to control, okay, what goes on in Iraq and Syria, okay, on its own without the tandem with Iran, okay, without the cooperation with Iran, okay, and if it had followed this path, this would have become costly, I would say, financially, militarily, politically, this and that, okay, and besides, it could have given rise to a bloodshed maybe between Kurds and Turks, okay. So the second option was to sort of try to find a kind of consensus, okay, with the Kurds in Iraq, in Syria, and with the PKK, basically. So what I'm saying is this: the fact that we have a peace process, okay, or the fact that we suddenly started to have this process has to do with the fact that this regional theater, okay, around the Kurdish question in Iraq and in Syria changed drastically after the Hamas attack, after the collapse of the resistance axis, okay? Turkey either had to sort of take the role of Iran in both Syria and Iraq, and this was nearly impossible, I would say, given the fact that Turkey is financially in a difficult situation, and besides, I think the new powers in the region, such as Gulf, Israel, France, would not let Turkey, okay, to sort of engage with the Kurdish question as it pleased, okay? So basically, as Turkey, I think, made a kind of realistic calculation, okay, we started to have this process, okay? This is the main reason, basically, for the fact that we have this process, okay? Now, this is how I see the issue. Now, let me talk about the prospects of the process, what may happen, what is about to happen, this and that, okay? As you know, you're in Slemani, by the way, yeah? Yeah, and tomorrow, you know that there is this ceremony in which PKK militants are going to lay down, a group of them are going to lay down their arms in somewhere in Raperin, I suppose. No?
Exactly, that's what
Yeah.
start more. Yes.
Yeah, it's going to take place tomorrow morning, I suppose. Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you what may happen, what is about to happen. Okay. Okay, let me tell you this. I don't think that, I mean, the Turkish state would take the risk of not not going any further. I think Turkish state is quite aware that this is a good chance for it, okay, to have a kind of brotherhood, peace, whatever, with the Kurds in Turkey, in Syria, this and that. So I think the process somehow will sort of advance, but only somehow, okay, because there are some huge, I would say, obstacles, okay, in front of the process. And much of these obstacles, I would say, have to do with the internal political dynamics, okay, domestic political dynamics in Turkey. Although the process may still be influenced, or the fate of the process may still be determined by what may happen in Syria, okay, in Rojava, I think much of the current problems that we have, or potential problems that we have to do with the domestic factors. And let me now try to dwell upon these factors. Okay, so the basic factor is this. Look, I mean, Kurdish question is a huge question for any political entity. It would be a huge question, and it is so for Turkey as well. Okay, it has to do with the fact that a nation like the Turkish one, okay, is not being recognized by the Turkish state, and for a true solution, the rights of the Kurds, okay, cultural, political, administrative, this and that rights have to be recognized if we do not, let's say, want to return back to this bloodshed that we have had in the past 50 years, okay? But on the other hand, the Turkish state elite, okay, the predominant mentality, this and that, these are not that much, I would say, how should I say, ready, or the Turkish elite is not ready, okay, to introduce such big scale reforms. But let's put this problem sort of aside. I think this is a kind of much more structural problem, and we may forget it for a while. A much more, I would say, contingent or conjunctural maybe factor, okay, has to do with the how should I say, with the fact that the leading party in Turkey, or we may say Erdogan, okay, is trying to do two things at the very same time, and the requirements of these two things are sort of contradictory. On the one hand, he wants to remain in power after 2028, okay, and for this to happen, he sort of needs to be as authoritarian as he was, okay, and he needs to sort of suppress the main opposition party, CHP, okay, although CHP's political support is now bigger than Erdogan's political support. It's likely that if a kind of free election takes place, CHP or CHP's candidate may win, okay, the election in 2028. So on the one hand, if Erdogan wants to remain in power, he has to suppress, okay, the political opposition in Turkey. And, you know, if you are following the domestic developments, you have already noticed that many mayors have been put into jail, this and that. There's a huge oppression over CHP. Okay, this is the first thing. And the second thing that Erdogan wants to do is to carry out this process. But this process, in order to be able to carry out this process, you need to open some space for democratization in Turkey. Okay, so that means the requirements of these two processes are sort of irreconcilable. Okay, that's staying in power and trying to solve the Kurdish question, whereas Erdogan wants to do both. Okay, and we don't know whether he's going to be able to move any further, but he seems to be determined. Look, the problem is this. Okay, this is a huge problem simply because of this. Now, if CHP, main opposition party, okay, if Erdogan continues to suppress CHP, then it is likely that CHP might might sort of start not to be that much willing to support the current process, whereas the support provided by CHP is quite key, okay, to the solution of the Kurdish question, because for Kurdish question to be resolved, we need to introduce some constitutional change, okay? And for constitutional change to take place, we need the support of CHP. Now, although CHP announced many times that it's willing, okay, to support the peace process, okay, we need to have some democratization steps for this to happen, okay? Whereas Erdogan, as I said, okay, is not ready to introduce any democratization, and it is likely that this might sort of keep CHP out of process. Okay, they're not, how should I say, keen on stepping back. Okay, but on the other hand, I mean, if the pressure on them is, if it goes like this, then it's likely that it's a bit difficult to get their support. So this is I think, the huge problem. The other problem, I would say, a much more, I don't know if it's really minor. I don't know if it's proper to use the term minor, but I still would say a much more minor problem is that for the disarmament, okay, to sort of proceed in a smooth manner, there are some very basic steps that need to be taken by AK Party, by Erdogan, such as what? Such as establishing a commission in the parliament that would sort of, how should I say, discuss about those laws which are necessary for a kind of penalty reduction for those PKK members, okay, who lay down their arms and who intend to return back to Turkey, okay? Whereas up to now, we haven't seen such an attempt, whereas it's a kind of mandatory. Look, the situation, in a sense, is kind of crazy, you know, because as I said a couple of minutes ago, tomorrow, roughly, I think 30 militants are going to lay down their arms, meaning they're going to, okay, PKK is already disbanded, and these people are going to lay down their arms, but they will be in a kind of limbo situation, you know? They are no more the members of PKK, they are no more sort of armed guys, but on the other hand, they may not return back to Turkey, okay? Because if they do, they will be put into the jail, okay? So that means the very basic requirements for the peace process to proceed in a smooth manner have not been taken yet, the basic steps. So this is another reason. But there, I shouldn't go any further. There, things can change, and things, I suppose, will change. Or AK Party, Erdogan, they seem to have realized that things should change, okay? And in fact, on Saturday, it has already been announced that Erdogan is going to make some very big, important speech in which, okay, I think he will sort of explain his perspective about the future of the Kurdish question, this and that, okay? And besides, Devlet Bahçeli, this leader of this national party who actually initiated the process, insisted, contrary to AK Party's wishes, insisted that a special commission, okay, has to be established in the parliament before the parliament is closed down for holiday. You know, so if Bahçeli had not insisted, and if he had not been successful, we would have been in such a situation. You know, PKK would start to lay down their arms, but in Turkey here, no political step was going to be taken. Okay, at least it's not going to take place because we know that now this commission is going to work. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, AK Party, the pace of AK Party is not matching with the pace of PKK. Yeah, this is a huge problem. Okay, when you listen to them, they say that, okay, once PKK sort of disarms itself, etc., then we're going to adjust our pace as well. Okay, they may do that, and I suppose they have to do that. But for this, I mean, we need to wait and see if this is going to happen. How much time do I have?
I think we almost done.
We need to stop. Okay. Then I think I have drawn a kind of picture, okay, about the reasons and the prospects of the process. Then the rest, I mean, could be, I think, discussed in the Q&A session. Huh?
Sure. Well, we have many questions, but before that, I will go to Professor Binar.
Sure.
So we start with him, and Professor Binar, would you tell us two different, let's say, from two different perspectives? The first, we start with, let's say, from Donald Trump's perspective regarding the Turkey as a state and his ongoing good relationship with Mr. Erdogan. What could be the U.S. positions in this process? How do you see, what is your understanding or interpretation for U.S. position in this process? That's the first question. The second one will be, what could be the consequences that process will have on KRG, that is part of the federal state of Iraq, and then later, what could be the consequences on the Iraqi states? Yes, Professor Binar, you have 20 minutes.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you, Angel, for this kind introduction, and I appreciate Dr. Kardo for moderating this timely conversation, and I also want to appreciate Sbey Research Center and the staff for giving us this opportunity to have a conversation about this timely topic. And also, it's wonderful to be with the professor from Turkey. I think he set up the stage quite well, although I made my notes starting from the regional theater, as he mentioned, as he termed it very well. So what we have right now is that it's really impossible to disengage and detach what is happening right now from what has been happening for the past 2 years. And that was the big regional shift that happened in the aftermath of the of the October 7, 2023, where we have seen that the Hamas-led event triggered the collapse of a domino collapse of Iranian regional proxies in the region. We have seen Israel dismantled, Hamas military capacity and capabilities in Gaza, and Hezbollah military capacity and capability in Lebanon, which resulted into crippling what is called the axis of resistance that has been there for Iran for decades, that they used as their deterrence for regional competition, but also for regional rivalries. But also domestically, Turkey has felt this shake wave, this tsunami that is happening in Middle East, and the domestic pressure, whether it's economically, whether it's politically, whether when it comes to the position of President Erdogan himself and the upcoming elections that is coming in Turkey, there seems to be a transformative time, a transformative moment for all the stakeholders that is in the process. I mean, if we look back into the previous phases of what is called the peace process, we could see that in 1993 under President Turgut Özal, that was the first peace process that conducted. Again in 1996 under the Prime Minister Najmuddin Erbakan, and then in 2010 by the late Iraqi President Jalal Talabani, followed by 2013 and 15 by AK Party and President Erdogan himself. But right now we are in a moment that is so different from the previous phases, and that is because the moment of the history, the moment politically, the geopolitical shift has arrived, and all the stakeholders has somehow an incentive into this transformative period. If we look at the PKK, for example, and the historic call by the leader of the Kurdistan Democratic Party, Abdullah Öcalan, where in February he called for a disbandment and the solution of the PKK and putting down the weapons, but also for the first time we see a key political leader who has been running the deep state and the military and political apparatus in Turkey for more than a decade, which is Devlet Bahçeli. For the first time he comes and then he talk about peace process, while compared to the previous phases, it could have been interpreted somehow he was an obstacle for this. But again, for President Erdogan right now as well, the incentives is there for him. As he called it, this is a Turkey without terror. That is his wording, and he obviously has incentives in doing an amendment or a reform for the constitution so that he could stay in power for more time. So the moment is really historic right now, and as Mr. Abdullah Öcalan mentioned, the PKK's time is over, as he said, because it was started because of the denial of the Kurds, because of the denial of the identity of the Kurds in Turkey. But as he said, this objective has now been fulfilled, and that's why this had led to this new discussions and sort of negotiations between both the state and also the other stakeholders. So for that to happen, there needs to be really a political transformation, but also a legal accommodation. So far, it's not clear what's gonna happen to the leadership of the PKK, what's gonna happen to hundreds of imprisoned leaders and fighters. So far, there's no clear roadmap about amnesty. So there needs to be a legal and constitutional accommodation and amendment that could make this peace process workable, but also implementable, because without those, how could you manage to do this? Here, the role of KRG, which is part of your question, Dr. Kardo, starts a really important role here, which we have seen in the past months. We have seen a high-level delegation from the DAM party comes to Kurdistan region, and then they meet with the KDP official and top leaders, and then they meet with the PUK top officials. And, okay.
Yes.
No, that's all right. So we have seen that these high-level delegations from DAM party come into the Kurdistan region, and they met with these high-level officials in order to make this process more comprehensive and more holistic process, where they got conversation with these leaders. They talked about the process and how KRG could actually contribute to this. And the role of KRG here is really important, because most of these high-level leaders, military commanders, and officials are in KRG. So KRG's role in here is to play a role for the implementation of this disbandment and disarmament, which has been also talked about by the previous speaker, and tomorrow, which is expected in Suleimania, that there will be this symbolic gesture by the PKK in order to show to the Turkish state that they are serious and they are all into this process. And KRG and officials here in Kurdistan, but also in Iraq, they all have welcomed these peace process discussions and talks. They also mentioned that they are ready to support and contribute in any way that they can. And in order for this process to be mobilized and to be a successful one, but also demobilization is not just an event, or is just not just an act. It's a long process or long processes. So in order to make this work, the Turkish states should also act based on that. They should do their part, because this is now a very fragile moment that we are talking, but also a very historic moment for all the stakeholders, because if Turkey is moving hand in hand with the PKK's indications and steps, then the process would look more serious and also would look more successful. As for Donald Trump and U.S. positions on that, since the very first day that President Trump came into office, he repeatedly said that he wants to have the legacy that he will stay the president of peace. And he repeatedly mentioned that he wants to solve all the conflicts. We have seen that his team and his delegation actively involved in trying to negotiate and mediate between Ukrainian and Russian state because of their war intention. But also at the same time, we have seen President Trump, who tries to solve the issues between Hamas and Israel, and the reports saying that there's going to a ceasefire at least is on the way and expected to be declared quite soon. So for President Trump, he doesn't want chaos in Middle East. He doesn't want war in Middle East. He doesn't want conflict, as it seems by his actions and by his statements. So I believe that the U.S. position on this specific issue is that, and it has been even between the issues between KRG and the Iraqi federal government, that the dialogue and diplomacy and discussions and political solutions and diplomacy is the only way to be able to overcome the ongoing conflict and to reach a momentum where everyone can live together. And I think for U.S. positions on this specific issue is the same, because as you mentioned in your opening, Kardo, as well. You have President Trump and then you have President Erdogan, where they seems to share a good relationship. They also don't want to deteriorate this kind of relationship. So it's I believe that it is very practical from Trump administration that support these processes. And moving on to what is next is that this is really, as I mentioned, is really a fragile moment, but also a great opportunity. This is the first time that both sides, from the Turkish state and the PKK, they gain this momentum, and like past efforts, this is a process that is state-led, regionally anchored, and also somehow symbolically public. And the region is changing, so the Kurdish question is as well. The collapse of Iran's regional architecture, the fall of Syria's fragmentation, and the government have removed what most of the times Turkey was saying an obstacle, which shaped the Turkish security policy. Now this shift gives Turkey a really rare moment and an opportunity, so that these long-standing conflict, an issue that has been there and that has been costed so many of lives, to be resolved. But it's also not only about conflict. It's about identity. It's about inclusion. It's about rights, and it's about coexistence. And that means crafting a future that respects the Kurdish cultural and political rights within a domestic democratic country, which Mr. Erdogan was also saying is the key for this process to be successful. And with that, I will give you back, Kardo, and happy for further discussions.
Well, thank you very much, Binar. Thank you for your presentation and for clarification and explanation of the impact of that process on the KRG and on the Iraqi federal state, and also the perspective of, let's say, the perspective from the US and Donald Trump's. Before I go to QA sessions, I would like to ask Professor Mesut, Professor, before I open give a chance to attendees to ask questions, what could be the Israel position in that process? Do you think Israel as a state, or the Benjamin Netanyahu's government, they will be happy with that process, that Turkey will get some kind of rest of clash between Kurds and Turkey? Do you think that they will be okay with the process?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm afraid I'm not a specialist on Israel, but I have thought about it. And I mean, at first sight, you may easily say that, okay, Israel would not be that much happy, okay, with the fact that Kurds and Turks, or Kurds and Turkey are going to be friendly, are going to be in good relations. At first sight, you may think so. But on the other hand, I think, I mean, since Israel has a huge partner, namely the United States, I think it would very well know that somehow it has to adjust its policies regarding the Middle East and Turkey, okay, with what United States, okay, sort of wants in the region. If things were left to Israel, I think, yeah, Israel would not be that much happy, okay, with the current peace process. But then we know that if things were left to Israel, Israel would not be Israel at all, okay? I mean, Israel has its power in the region simply because it's backed by the states, by the Western powers, this and that. So it has to take into consideration, okay, what the United States, okay, is sort of wishing to have in the region. And there, I think, United States is willing to have a kind of, again, cooperation or peace between Turkey and Kurds. And I think United States preferring to have a Turkey which is not similar to Iran, okay? Let's say a Turkey, which is out of the sort of Western system. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is this: I mean, in the long run, I think Israel would also be kind of happy with a Turkey whose relations with Kurds are kind of friendly, this and that. But in Syria, I don't know. I mean, to be honest, what may happen? Things there could be more tense, I suppose. Because again, there I think the perspective of states, Turkey and Israel, their perspective. I mean, it's a bit difficult to sort of reconcile all these three perspectives regarding Kurds, I suppose. Because on the one hand, I mean, there is Turkey, which I mean basically says that Kurds should be sort of part of integrated into the whole system. There is the United States, then there is SDF and Israel. I think they would be happy with a sort of autonomous, Kurdish entity in Syria. And I think there is the United States, which is trying to build a kind of balance, between these two perspectives. So there, I think the relations could be kind of more tense, and I think we have to really watch carefully what may happen in Syria soon.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Because my question it comes from this perspective that PKK they have had a good relations with Iran, and Israel, they have been kind of in problem with Mr. Erdogan. So that's why I just came to ask that question, that it could be that complicated kind of that process will happen, because that relations, very, very complicated relations, because of PKK's relations with Iran and problematic relations between AKP or Mr. Erdogan's and the government in Israel. Okay, I'm going to open the sessions QA session. So let's say if the guests we have, they will have questions. But again, Professor Mesut, you mentioned that the change that will happen, for example, constitutions change. Do you think that's so easy that will happen for Erdogan, for Mr. Erdogan? Because it requires a lot of, let's say, political communications with opposition party. And right now, the relationship between the AKP and opposition party is not so good. So it seems like very, very tough for Mr. Erdogan to get it.
Well, you're right. And to be honest, we have two sets of constitutional change, ahead of us. The first set has to do with Erdogan's sort of desire, to have the right to be re-elected, and the second set has to do with the, of course, resolution of the Kurdish question, and again, Erdogan wants to have both, whereas the opposition, I mean, especially CHP, there's a nationalist opposition as well, which is separate from the party led by Bahçeli. They are sort of severely opposing, to the whole process, but they are not that much strong, especially in the parliament, although they have a popular support, but they haven't got many deputies in the parliament. So if we forget them, we may say that CHP could be sort of convinced, about the necessity of having some constitutional sort of changes, in order to resolve the Kurdish question, For instance, they seem to be sort of, compared to past, they seem to be sort of more open, to have a discussion regarding the rights. So yes, CHP, as I said, it seems more open to sort of consider, or more open to have a discussion about the constitutional changes regarding the resolution of the Kurdish question. That means if Erdogan leaves, okay, the constitutional changes regarding his own fate aside, then it could be easier, okay, to have a kind of consensus about the constitutional change regarding the resolution of the Kurdish question. But I don't know if this happened. And in fact, the sort of CHP people are kind of worried, okay, that Erdogan may sort of convince, okay, Dem Party, okay, about a constitutional change that could sort of, how should I say, meet the demands of himself and demands of some of the demands of the, let's say, Kurdish side, okay? So they have this kind of a, I don't know, hesitation or worry, okay, about the fate of the constitutional changes.
Well, Mr. Binar, do you think there is a chance for other regionals players to, let's say, to make it terrible for process to go on tomorrow, or kind of to make it more difficult for PKK and Turkey?
Well, obviously, in just like any other process, this is also a process, and process could have tremendous success and also tremendous challenges and obstacles. And there are people who could be happy about some of the stuff that is happening, and there might be people who are not happy, especially with the latest regional shift and with the weakening of the Iranian influence in Middle East, in these specific countries, but also the fall of Assad regime, who was a corridor from Tehran to Lebanon and to that side of the world. So for sure, there are people who might not feel completely on board, but also we have to look at the situation that happened just 15 days ago or 20 days ago. Iran came into confrontation with Israel. We have seen this massive exchange of ballistic missiles and drones, and that ended with the US strike on the nuclear sites in Iran. So Iran is already going through some internal issues and also some regional issues and some international issues. We have seen that regionally it has been sidelined, but also internationally there is economic sanction on it, and that made the economic situation for the Iranians and for all the people who are living in the country so difficult. So I wouldn't think that it's going to be likely that Iran at this point would want to get involved in more regional dynamics and in more issues that is happening around its territory. But also, we could say that there are smaller groups that is aligned to Iran and smaller proxy networks around the country and also in Iraq that could potentially do some sort of action. But also, we have seen that the Iraqi National Security Advisor, Qasem Araji, who was in Erbil yesterday and in Suleimania, and there's a constant coordination and cooperation between the Iraqi security apparatus and in KRG. And there's also media on the site and lots of journalists and activists and political parties and representatives. So I see that it's less likely that something serious might happen tomorrow in order to make the process slower and to somehow affect the direction. But you know, we are living in Middle East and things are changing momentarily.
Yes, exactly. We are in a very, very changeable environment in the Middle East since 7 October. And also seeing the 12 days of the conflict, clashes between Israel and Iran. Binar, what could be the consequences of this process on the Iranians system, on the Iranian regime? Do you think the Iranian regime, they feel good or they feel okay with that process? Do you think they will say, all right, let's the process get succeed? Because as you mentioned, they have also Kurds in Iran.
Yes. Well, we have to, I think one of the main indication that was coming from Iran and from Islamic Republic of Iran is we have seen for the first time President of Iran coming to KRG and talking in a proper Kurdish language and trying to reach out to the voter base and trying to reach out to the Kurdish base in his country. We have seen that the president came to KRG. Came to Kurdistan region. He met the Kurdistan president Gagnechir. He met the prime minister, the other parties, the Kurdish leaders. So I think there are some understanding that is already have been developed within the Iranian political apparatus that in Middle East there's something that's called spillover, and the effect of the events could go from a state to another. We have seen when ISIS came first in Syria, it was just a matter of a few days when there was a spillover and they came and they took a large portion of territory in Iraq as well. So I think that the moment in Middle East that we are witnessing right now is very, very different from October 7. And the regional shift, the balance of power shift has changed the course of history. So with this massive internal pressure inside Iran, but also international sanctions and regional sidelines of Iran, I believe that Iran is at this point is quite limited to what they can do outside of their border. And from the concerns and fears of internal challenges for them that might arise, I believe that they might think and do their calculation again and adapt their strategy and tactic and go with this regional transformation that has been ongoing for the past 2 years.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Mesut. Again, I will ask you again. You mentioned that because of the change in the Middle East and because of the change 2 different times, as you mentioned, how do you think, or what could be the consequences of the peace process between PKK and Turkey regarding to Rojava? Do you think that it will help Rojava to more stabilize it, or it will make things more difficult in Rojava? I mean, Kurds in Syria.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say this. I think without having a kind of consensus, okay, in Rojava between Turkey and SDF or PKK, whatever, this process would not have started at all, okay? That means we already have a kind of common ground there. Otherwise, I mean, before the peace process, Turkey often, threatened, okay, SDF there, and they threatened many times that once United States or American forces leave, they're going to sort of destroy the whole administrative apparatus there, this and that. So, I mean, before the peace process started, the relations were quite hostile, I would say, okay? Whereas now, I cannot say that everything has been settled down, but I think even without having a kind of agreement or consensus, okay, the process would not have even started. But on the other hand, this doesn't mean, okay, that there's no more any significant problem, okay, between Turkey and the SDF or Kurds in Syria. The agreement signed between Mazlum Abdi and Jolani on the 10th of March, I suppose, these 8 items, okay? This constitutes a kind of ground, okay? Not only between Syrian regime and SDF, but it's a kind of ground approved by Turkey as well, meaning it's a kind of common ground between Turkey and PKK, Turkey and SDF, Turkey and Syrian Kurds as well. Okay, so there is this ground there, but on the other hand, as you all might have followed, these 8 items are quite ambiguous. Okay, I mean you can sort of derive almost anything out of it. Okay, you can sort of say that okay, this sort of enables these Syrian Kurds to have their autonomous administration. Yet, on the other hand, you may say that this enables the regime, okay, to go and control Rojava, Haseki, and the other parts. Okay, so basically now we have a ground, and this ground I think needs to be sort of clarified. And I think, as you again might have heard, this Tom Barak was in Damascus yesterday together with Mazlum Abdi and with the French envoy, and they started to discuss, okay, they started to sort of elaborate on this very common ground. And I mean, we can say that, okay, I mean, thanks God, there is this ground, there is something that these two sides can sort of work out, okay? There's at least this ground that two sides can work out, okay? So basically, I mean, one may not say that, okay, things have been settled down, but at least, I mean, things are quite better compared to what was taking place before the peace process started.
Yes, thank you, Professor. Again, for our participants, you can have your questions. Please raise your hand. And as I can see, Ahang, please ask your question because you raised your hand. And please, yes. Ahang.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Kardo. My name is Ahang Habib Hawrami. I'm a researcher and journalist. I got 3 questions. By the way, I really enjoyed the discussion, and I got 3 questions. My first question is for Professor Mesut. Professor, during your presentation, you mentioned that the entire approach of this peace process and raising the Kurdish questions, trying to solve it, is hygienes on a realistic calculations of Turkey. So the question here is, in your view, can these grounded calculations truly pave the way for a successful disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration of PKK guerrillas, do you think? And my second question is for Mr. Binar. Mr. Binar, historically, the Kurdish question, or let's say sometimes the Kurdish issue, has largely centered around the Kurdish identity in Turkey. So, do you think once the PKK lays down its arms, what new dimensions or challenges do you foresee shaping the Kurdish question moving forward? And in another word, like, how do you see the Kurdish question will be centered after the disarmament of PKK? And my second question, that any of you any of the very respected speakers can answer, is that we all know, or let's say it's widely understood, that in any disarmament process, including PKK, there will always be functions or groups that they are not satisfied. They may resist, like laying down their weapons. Do you think that will happen to the PKK? If yes, how that affects the Kurdish question or the whole process, let's say? Thank you so much. I know my questions were a bit detailed, but I really appreciate your answers.
Should I start?
Yes, please,
but
Professor.
Ahang, can you please repeat your first question?
Yes,
I missed
sure.
some of it.
Yeah, do you hear me now? Yes?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, like during your presentation, you mentioned that the entire approach of peace process right now, or peace efforts in Turkey right now, based on the realistic calculations of the Turkish political system, including Bahçeli's or Erdogan's. So in your view, this realistic calculations, will they make to or pave the way to successful disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration of PKK?
I see now. Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, well, I think it all depends whether the Turkish state is ready to take the steps necessary for the resolution of the Kurdish question on the one hand, and for the integration of the PKK into the political system on the other hand, okay? And in relation to both issues, the Turkish state, as I said, okay, I mean, seems to be kind of ready, but on the other hand, when it comes to practice, there's a kind of delay. I'm talking that way because we have heard enough from both Öcalan and PKK that, okay, they are ready, okay, to sort of for disarmament. They are ready for sort of reintegration, this and that. So things basically are now up to the Turkish state, because PKK has already dissolved itself, okay? And they're basically expecting to have these legal amendments and the constitutional change, which are necessary for the resolution of the Kurdish question and for the integration of the PKK into the system. Okay, so basically, yeah, it's Turkish state's sort of turn, okay, to sort of move. Otherwise, PKK has already made its own move, I would say. Coming to the second question, first of all, what we gather out of the responses of PKK members is that there isn't much sort of resistance, okay, towards the peace process from the PKK side. There were some, again, question marks from a couple of members of the organization, but apparently Erdogan was allowed to get in touch, okay, with its organization, with the members of the PKK, and he seems to have sort of convinced, okay, them that first PKK should sort of dissolve itself, and it should start kind of it should take some initial steps for disarmament, and then the reforms will start, okay? Because when you listen to the PKK circles, what they are saying is basically this: they also concede that the period of armed struggle is over. Okay, they also believe that, okay, now priority should be given to the political struggle, and they are ready to sort of to play their own role once the Turkish state opens the sort of space for political struggle. But for this to happen, they say, okay, Turkish state needs to introduce some reforms. And as I said this many times, okay, there we haven't seen sort of remarkable steps yet. But on the other hand, we still have time. I think we have time till October, basically. Again, as I said in my speech, for instance, on Saturday, Erdogan is going to give a speech, and there we can see sort of we can get the clues, okay, as to what the Turkish state may do in the coming 2 or 3 months. But again, as I said during my speech, I don't think the Turkish state would sort of take the risk of not using this chance, meaning, okay, the process could be sort of painful, okay, could be long, could be difficult, but still I think the Turkish state will take the sort of necessary steps to ensure that disarmament is achieved, the dissolvement of PKK is achieved, this and that. Yep.
Yes, Binar, the third question, it was for you, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Ahan Khan, for your question. I will try to form it in a way that somehow I reach the last question as well. Well, perhaps for the past decade, the Turkish intervention, the Turkish state intervention and operations in northern Iraq, and also recently in Syria, was on a pretext that because of PKK presence, because of PKK actions, because of what they call PKK terrorism in their words. So if there is no PKK, and if we witness a disbandment and disarmament of PKK, and now PKK has diluted themselves, then why there should be an issue for the Turkish state for this sort of intervention with the other country, but also internally as well. So for the state, they have been using this sort of rhetoric and pretext in order to legitimize their actions, and also in order to institutionalize and to run on elections for political purposes and so on and so forth. So this has been there for so long, but now this pretext is gone if everything goes well and this process could reach a good level. After that, we need real steps by the Turkish state, and this cannot happen without a legal amendment and political accommodation. And a legal amendment, by that we mean the people who have been in the ranks of PKK, the hundreds of political imprisoned prisoners that has been in prison for so many years. There needs to be a transitional justice for these people. They need to be reintegrated into the society. They need to be accepted. And for that, there should be a real will by the Turkish state. And then we go for some more issues, which I would still see even after this answering your question, which we might still have a real political representation issues, because we have seen in the past elections in Turkey that the pro-Kurdish parties or the minority parties, when it was HDP and then DEM party, where they gained quite well seats and mayors of the major Kurdish city mayorship and all of that. But then the Turkish state replaced them with their agents or with their officers. So we need to see a real political and legal accommodation. And also there should, I already see that the people there are going through a real financial hardship, and this kind of environment where the non-Turks cannot reach some sort of positions within the political offices or within the security apparatus or within the financial institutions or within the legal institutions and private sector as well. So all these things needs to be worked on and changed, and that cannot happen in a matter of 24 hours or in a month or in a year. So it's a really, really long process. The voter bases of both sides, they need to accept each other. There should be a lot of social programs for all sides. Media could play a really important role if they want to do so. So it's really a tremendous opportunity, but also with tremendous challenges. We have to see how all this unfolds and how it will shape in the Turkish society in the upcoming days and months and years.
Well, thank you, Binar. We have a last question from Kawsar. Please, Kawsar, ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Just let me a second.
Yes, okay.
First of all, thank you for your webinar. This brilliant topic which is so it's a hot one these days. Thank you, and thank you for the time that you gave me. I am here as an Iranian Kurdish activist, and I participated as an Iranian Kurdish participation. Then I have a question about the Kurdish issue inside Iran and the effect of this topic. I would like to ask a question regarding the situation of Kurds in Iran and whether developments surrounding the PKK, particularly the issue of disarmament and the peace process in Turkey, my question is, have any impact on Iranian Kurdistan issues Does the PKK's trajectory influence the political or security environment for Iranian Kurdish people in any significant way? Thank you for the time that you gave me. I look forward to hearing your insights. Thank you.
Professor Mesut, yes, please.
Yeah, okay. I don't know much about Iran, to be honest, the Kurdish question in Iran, but let me tell you a couple of things regarding PKK's disarmament process. First of all, I think the one clear-cut information that we have is that the Turkish state insists, okay, that all the Turkish citizen PKK members should sort of disarm themselves, and they should return back either to Turkey or they should go to the European countries that will be decided afterwards. Meaning, the Turkish state doesn't say much as to the Iranian citizen PKK members and the Syrian citizens PKK members, okay? And as far as I gather, once PKK dissolves itself, the Iranian citizen PKK members, I think, will prefer to go back to Iran and will be part of PKK, okay? And if this happens, to be honest, I don't know much about their numbers, okay? The Iranian citizen PKK militants. So once they become a part of PKK, I don't know what will be the influence of this over Kurdish politics in Iran. This is the first thing that I should underline. The second thing, PKK, during these discussions, announced that they are somehow ready to sort of act in coordination with Iran against with Israel, okay, against Iran, okay. I don't know how serious they were, but they said such sorts of things, okay. So this also produces the impression that once things are sort of resolved, okay, in Turkey, then PKK or PKK, okay, might be more active in Iran. But on the other hand, I don't know the extent to which PKK is influential among the Iranian Kurdish actors in Iranian Kurdistan. Okay, as far as I gather, it's not number one actor. Okay, so I think the fate of Iranian Kurds still mostly depend on the Kurdish actors other than PKK or PKK. This is what I could say.
Well, thank you very much. And last one, very briefly, Ranas, please ask your question again, very briefly. Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. Yeğen. I don't know what my internet is cut before. I just want to ask if this process is going well in Turkey, the peace process. Does the Turkish national security and the Turkish state think that the Kurdish abroad of the Turkey are still a threat for Turkish national security or not? During the past, you remember many of the places in the south of north of Iraq is attacked by the Turkish by the drone. If this process is going well, still the Turkish in Iraqi Kurdistan to not be the threat of something like attacking something like this. This question I would like to answer by Kak Binar or Kak Mesut.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kak Binar, please.
Yeah. All right. I think what we hear from the Turkish state for the past 2 decades in their intervention, in their operation in northern Iraq and in Kurdistan region was because of the PKK, was because of the presence of PKK, and they never or rarely mention it any other reasons to be used as a pretext. So if in Turkish perspective, if the issue of PKK is solved, if this process is going well and all the stakeholders work alongside together, and we could reach a level that could somehow be seen as a success, and we see finally the dissolution of the PKK, then there shouldn't be any pretext or reason for Turkish bombardment in Kurdistan region or in northern Iraq. So logically, there shouldn't be. But this is also theoretically that we are talking about. We don't know whether this process is going to achieve something. We don't know to what extent the Turkish presence in Iraq, in northern Iraq, and in Kurdistan region of Iraq is going to be decreased, or is going to be the same, or they're going to leave the country. So all these dynamics could change in the future. But theoretically, there shouldn't be any pretext, in my opinion.
Yes, Professor Mesut, if you have any comments.
Maybe I can say a couple of words about this.
Please.
As Binar said, theoretically, I mean, Turkish state should sort of withdraw, its forces from Iraqi Kurdistan, but I'm almost 100% sure that this will not happen. There's a saying in Turkey which goes like this: Turkish army would never withdraw from the places it enters, something like that. So basically, I don't think that, I mean, even PKK is 100% dissolved. The Turkish army will sort of remove its military posts there and withdraw immediately. This will, I don't know if it will ever happen, but even if it happens, it will take some time, I suppose, and it will basically depend on the pressure that Turkey faces, or Turkey sort of receives from Iraqi central state, from United States, from the regional powers, this and that. And as central government in Iraq is not that much strong, as far as I know, I don't think that, I mean, they can say Turkey, that Turkish military posts should be removed immediately. So I think, this may happen in a while, but I think only in the long run, if it ever happens.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Mesut, for your participation, for your contribution. It was very, very, very important for us. It was very academic. I appreciate it. And thank you very much, Professor Binar, for your contribution also. We are going to be done with that webinar. And again, thank you very much for all participants. And I'm going back to Angel. Yes, please, Angel.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kardo. Thank you, Professor Mesut. Thank you, Binar, for this insightful discussion.